Now, how could it be? This person has sat there and learned Torah for 40 years. We're talking about 4 decades. This is what you have after 4 decades? Angels with small wings? That's what you arrived at after 40 years? The Gemara in Masechet Taanit, page 7a, brings a verse from the prophet Jeremiah, chapter 50, verse 36, that says everything we just said in a single verse. Rabbi Bar Bar Chana said, why are the words of Torah compared to fire? As it says in Jeremiah chapter 23, verse 29, Alo ko devarai be'esh ne'um Hashem. Is my word not like fire, says Hashem? This is to teach you, just as fire does not ignite from a single piece of wood, so too the words of Torah are not retained by someone who studies on his own without a partner or rabbi to sharpen his mind. And this is in essence what Rav Yosef ber Chanina was saying when he was talking about the verse in Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 36, the one I was mentioning to you, where it says, Cherev el abadim v'noalu, a sword upon those who are alone, and they shall become fools. It says, what is this? What's the interpretation of this verse? It says, a sword upon the enemies of such Torah scholars, meaning a person becomes an enemy of himself if they study Torah on their own, without a study partner, without having a rabbi. And not only that the outcome of such study will be that the person will become foolish, tipesh. And not only that person will become sinful as well. Meaning he's learning Torah, but the outcome is that learning of his Torah will actually be the outcome. He's going to make more sins, and he's going to become stupid or not smarter. How could it be? How could it be that one could learn Torah and become stupider? About 150 years ago, one of the Gdolei Hador was known by the name of the Maharil Diskin. The Maharil Diskin was a Kodesh Kodashim, and during his time, there was someone that was known as a Torah scholar, but was also a recluse, where he studied Torah for 40 years without speaking to a single person. No rabbi, no talmidim, no students, no chavruta, nothing. He would just go, sit there by himself, with his Gemara, with his books, and learn day and night for 40 years. Once in a while, someone would recognize that he's there, dedicating himself, and it would give him some food, some money. But no one ever heard him say anything. No one ever saw anything he wrote. But people thought he was a Torah scholar. He's learning Torah for 40 years already. And one day he died. And when the Chevra Kadisha came to collect the body and purify it before the burial, they saw that he had a will. In his will, he requested that he be buried with all of the writings, the Chiddushim, the insights that he has written over the last 40 years of learning Torah, and that no one would look at them. Now, if this is Torah, you can't just bury it, because technically Torah doesn't belong to anybody. It doesn't belong to him. Even though he wrote it, it doesn't belong to him. So they went to the Gdolei Hador, the Maharil Diskin, and they said, Kvod Harav, we have this guy, Torah scholar, 40 years, hasn't spoken to anybody. He has a sack the size of a bed full of things that he wrote over the last 40 years, And he specifically wrote he wants to be buried with everything that he wrote, and he doesn't want anyone to look at it. Are we allowed to do that? The Maharid Diskin says, no. The Torah is not his. First, I have to see it, to review what he wrote, to see if it's good Torah, if it's kosher. And in that case, we're not allowed to bury it. But if it's not good, we can bury it, do whatever we want. Bring it to me first. So they brought the Maharid Diskin this huge sack full of writings, and the Maharid Diskin takes some of the writings in front of him, and he finds the first Chiddush, first insight from this person. And he's talking about the Jacob's ladder. And the guy writes, the scholar wrote, here we see that the Torah says that the angels were going up and down. And Rashi says that they were going up and down, but the question is, shouldn't it say that they go up and down and then back up? Why is it saying that they went up and down the ladder? Now, as a side note, Rashi answered that question. Had this Torah scholar read Rashi, he would have actually had the right answer, which is that the angels that were from the exile were going up, the angels from Israel were coming down, meaning it was two different sets of angels. But this guy, this silent Torah scholar, he came up with his own Chiddush. What was the Chiddush? Apparently the angels that went up had strong wings, and they were able to fly up. And the angels that went down had small wings, and therefore they couldn't go back up. As soon as the Maharid Diskin saw this, he says to the Chevra Kadisha, bury all of this as its own nonsense. Complete nonsense, it's not Torah at all. Now how could it be? This person has sat there and learned Torah for 40 years. We're talking about 4 decades. This is what you have after 4 decades? Angels with small wings? That's what you arrived at after 40 years? Yes. Why? Because he did not serve Talmidei Chachamim. He didn't go back and forth with Torah scholars. He did not go back with a rabbi. He did not go anywhere other than his own mind, simply assuming that whatever he thinks is correct. Now, this may sound familiar to some of you, because that's actually how the people of the church read the Torah. They read the Torah in such a fashion where they look at the verse or the translation of the verse, and more times than less, the manipulated translation of the verse in their King James Bible or their Quran or whatever other nonsensical book, man-made creation they have in front of them. And they look at it and they simply interpret things according to their logic, without having any connection to sages of the previous generation, needless to say, to sages at all, because every generation says something different from the one before it. There is no lineage, there's no history, there's no Masoret like the Jewish people actually have. They simply allow everything to be according to their understanding. But to impress the crowd, the Black Hebrew Israelites always have somebody that's in the background that usually you can't see their face reading the words, because maybe apparently the one that's the speaker only knows how to speak but he doesn't know how to read. And he reads the Bible really loud and makes sure that you can hear it. Makes it sound like as if he's reading it from the, I don't know whether it's Mount Sinai or the Tower of Babel, but nonetheless, he's reading it. And in the church of the Messianics, they'll read you some verse. Usually the most vague, convoluted things that are out there are the things that come out of their mouth, because the things that they read are simply not translatable in the common language without the assistance of the sages that have the Masoret that goes directly to the person that actually spoke those words, whether it be the prophet Isaiah or Zechariah or Moses himself, or if it's from Hashem. But needless to say, the way they look at everything is simply, the way I see it, the way I understand it, that's what it is. Very similar to this Am HaAretz, but just a little worse. Because the Am HaAretz, at least he read the writings of some of the sages, and he read the different parts of the Torah, and still he's considered an Am HaAretz, because he's missing that last ingredient of Shimush Talmidei Chachamim. Now we're going to get to why that's such a big deal in a moment, but we see here that the Am HaAretz, even though he learned, even though he's really Jewish, even though he has hundreds of books at his disposal that he read, not just buying them, still he's considered an ignoramus, because he's missing the last ingredient. But if you compare it to the people of the church, the Hebrew Israelites and the Messianic Jews and the Jews for Jesus and all the other people of the different nations, they're doing even less. There is no commentary. There's simply what I understand. Meaning that the removal from the truth is many steps further. We are meant to be a light unto the nations, not to follow their misguided practices. Remember, every Jew has to remember that he's a Jew and she's a Jew. We don't celebrate non-Jewish holidays, even if they seem harmless. It's a zilzul, disrespect to the Torah, and could lead to Chilul Hashem, desecration of God's name. Stick to our holy Torah and our own holidays. That's the path of a true Jew.